I have more in common and more shared interests with a Tommy Robinson supporter than I do Lakshmi Mittal. Right? Just because I share the same skin colour as a South Asian capitalist billionaire elite does not mean we have shared interests.
In your book, you write a lot about your skepticism around DEI, which I think is valid, and people are
brown faces in high places.
There's been a lot of critique on this, but I just want to push back slightly on it by pointing out that after the BLM protests, S&P 100 companies added over 323,000 jobs in 2021, and 94% of those did go to people of color. According to Bloomberg, it wasn't just entry level either. More than half of the new exec roles went to people of color, and their share of higher level jobs rose by 2 percentage points. Not huge, still ideally in the right direction. More than double the usual annual increase. Similarly, we saw some things after the Me Too movement between 2017 and 2024. Female leadership in FTSE 350 firms jumped by over 10%. And by 2019, women held more than a quarter of senior management roles globally. So although there's a lot to be said about the pitfalls of DEI, and there have also been some actual measurable outcomes that have been positives for communities of color, have there not?
Okay, first thing is, I do not give a fuck about female CEOs. I do not.
Of course you don't.
No.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Tell me how much your cleaner earns. Tell me what kinds of conditions they're working under. I do not care about the C-suite. I do not care. You could have every single person in there be, a woman who's Muslim, who blah, 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 blah.
So representation politics, you think, has no value?
I think that there might be a psychological impact of it, a sort of psychological compensation of, if I can see myself, it means that I don't see myself as being fully abject. But I'm a Marxist. I do not care about the colour of the capitalist class. I don't. And also the other thing about being South Asian is that I'm seeing an Indian capitalist class. I'm seeing your Mittals and the people who are close to Modi and all the rest of it. I'm not thinking, oh, well, this is so good for us. I mean, I care about working class people. That is what I care about. I care about people who have to live off wages. And when, you take, say, Sheryl Sandberg, right? Lean in, and she went off to work for Facebook, right? I don't care about Sheryl Sandberg. I care about the Filipino women working content moderation, having to look at images of rape and violence and racist abuse, and who are literally having nervous breakdowns because of it, all while being paid nothing. I care about the Latin American cleaners in the City of London. I do not give a fuck about the top floor.
Okay, so I obviously broadly agree with this, and I think that there's one of the challenges that you would face, obviously, as a Marxist in our current environment, is that everyone is literally hooked on, capitalist, hyper achievement. So everyone wants to be a billionaire. Everyone wants to be on 10 holidays a year. Everyone wants to live the luxe lifestyle. There is, we are being drip fed constantly this sort of aspirational life. And I think it's part and parcel, whether we acknowledge it or not, of what we've integrated as our perception of success. And alongside that, I acknowledge where we are, which is that we are in the late stages of capitalism. I would ask, given where we are, given the systems that we operated in, strategically, there are these issues of representation that come up. I don't know if you recently saw that Jay-Z and Beyoncé had joined Ivanka and Jared at this big Reform Alliance gala, and they were seated at the same table, and there was a lot of conversation happening. Is it better that we do have Jay-Z and Beyoncé sitting at that table, or is it better if they weren't at that table?
Do you feel better because of it? Oh, okay, all right. So the first thing is when it comes to Beyoncé and Jay-Z, my only expectation of them is drop a good album. That's it. I do not expect them, people who have been very clear about their alignment with capital, right? I mean, Beyoncé was the face of Pepsi for a really long time.
I mean, she said nothing throughout the entire genocide and dropped an album with her draped in the American
right.
flag.
I mean,
I think there's a lot of things
I just don't have any expectations of that. if we're saying, well, it's good to be at the table and it's good to be seen, as a South Asian woman, was I supposed to look at Suella Braverman and be like, we made it to the top of the mountain? What?
No, but did it also send a message that actually these spaces are now going to be more open, or do we think it's just window dressing?
If you administer the racism,
right,
that's the condition, right? Why is it that we've had a majority of our Home Secretaries be people of colour since the Windrush scandal?
Well, you tell me.
I can tell you. It's because it means they can go, oh, well, it can't be racist, the fact that I'm deporting your grandmother who's worked her whole life here because I'm a person of colour. Because I think you said that, giving people the vantage point or the sort of, authority from which to speak, that's a form of power. If it's a form of power, it hasn't achieved anything concrete and it hasn't achieved anything with deep roots. And this is my point. Real power comes from a different place.
I suppose that's the question is, I gave you some statistics earlier around kind of recruitment in post BLM, but also post Me Too, which I think, again, it'd be interesting to look at the breakdown of those figures across industries and whether it's reflected primarily in white collar spaces, which no doubt it is. I don't think there's any dispute that capitalism consistently co-opts any anti-racism initiative to limit its reach. And I personally regard DEI as the prime capitalist co-optation, which allows, us to focus in primarily on individualized guilt over structural change. What I guess I would mitigate the perspective with slightly is that I do also think that, the structures of whiteness that we exist in are premised on hierarchies of human value, which are so deeply embedded in our psyche that they are then reflected almost unconsciously within our economic systems. And so I do think that both things can operate simultaneously, meaning I do think that there is still value in asking, people racialized as white to consider the implications of their whiteness in given settings, of their status, be it male, be it cis, be it white, and the impact of that in the way that they communicate with other members of staff. I think learning about what other people find important and unimportant is decentering yourself. I think that's also important. So I guess what I'm saying is, of course, it's not going to solve racism, but doesn't it still have some value?
I think the first point that I think is really important to insist on, I have more in common and more shared interests with a Tommy Robinson supporter than I do Lakshmi Mittal, right? Just because I share the same skin colour as a South Asian capitalist billionaire elite does not mean we have shared interests. And I think the fact that you can see a Beyoncé or a Jay-Z breaking bread with, Jared and Ivanka, it shows you that the colour that matters is the green of the dollar, right? Once you get to that really elite level. And my point is that, this difference, this gap between me and the Tommy Robinson supporter, because, I exist on the street, I exist in real life spaces. It's frightening, right? But that difference is this big. The difference between me and Lakshmi Mittal is this big. So that's my first point. And I think that really helps us set some strategic objectives. That doesn't mean giving up on anti-racism at all. It's just me saying that, okay, if me and this particular relative who I have in mind, actually, when it comes to the economic stuff, really, really align, what if the experience of working together politically on that stuff actually brings us closer on the immigration stuff? And my point is that this is what the Black Panthers showed, is that shared struggle, shared economic struggle, actually brought them closer to people that had the Confederate flag as their symbol, and they gave up the Confederate flag out of respect.
But they didn't support the Confederacy. They didn't want to return to slavery, right? They were using it as a symbol of Southern identity. They weren't people who ultimately believed in the white supremacy that maintained slavery.
No, this is really, really true. This is really true. And I suppose the point I'm making is that I think when we're talking about, this takes us back to discourses, right? Like, we would view someone using that flag in a really different way today. I don't think we would give them the grace of being like, oh, they don't mean it in that way, right? That
possibly not.
I mean, definitely not.
For sure.
Definitely
I don't disagree. I think it would probably, unfortunately, be an immediate dismissal. But I think where it's complicated and where, I'll be honest, I am not as magnanimous as you with the Tommy Robinson one, because I'm in a similar situation in my own life, is that I am not ready to sit down with somebody who wishes harm on me, my friends, my family, my child, my community. I'm not prepared to sit down and talk to you with love and compassion. And this could well be a personal failing, but I think that the basic respect that we have to have in coming to the table is at the very least, the recognition of a common humanity, meaning at the very least, you recognize I have as much right to sit here and talk to you as you have to come and sit here and talk to me. From the minute we're approaching the discussion of, I'm a superior race and I will tell you how this shit runs, and I'm literally talking about other white people talking to me as a white person because I'm a Muslim in that way. So it even extends to that.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
I mean, whiteness is conditional as a whole thing.
Right. And so in that sense, I just think I don't know how we ask people who are fearing for their lives, fearing for their children's lives, fearing for their communities, to sit down and talk to people who will literally sit opposite you and say, get out of my country. Islam isn't welcome here. You're scum, and it's like, so we're supposed to kind of accept a regression.
Who's saying accept? I'm not saying accept. The thing I'm saying is something different, which is if I sit down with a Tommy Robinson supporter and the discussion is immigration, the discussion is national identity, the discussion is race, okay? Because it's raising the salience of the issues that divide us.
Mm-hmm.
If I sit down with a Tommy Robinson supporter and instead we're talking about the economy, we're talking about how the rich get away with everything, we're talking about how they haven't been able to find a job for the past 12 months, we're talking about this other stuff, we're starting from a different place. It doesn't mean that immigration isn't important. It doesn't mean you don't have those conversations. But the first conversation you have is something different. And this is the thing, is that I think that it's really hard. If you say, okay, a recognition of my humanity is the condition of us sitting down together. I mean, the thing is that racism is powerful and it's been here for centuries. Sexism is powerful, it's been here for centuries. Homophobia is powerful and it's been here for centuries. We're starting...
Which is what DEI was trying to teach them not to replicate.
But I also think that I think it failed to do that.
Sure.
It failed. And that's because it was the wrong approach. It was the wrong approach. I'm not sitting here going, and the fact someone is racist, it's fine. I'm saying, actually, if you want to deal with racism, you have to create a common cause with them first. First you create a common cause. And the other things will come.
But do you remember, Ash, there was a time where it was kind of shameful to be a racist? We've long past that point. I feel like we need to bring back it being shameful to be a racist. I feel like, if anything, and I don't have particularly high expectations of the DEI courses that people go on, but if at the very least it could, result in people coming out and saying, yeah, I shouldn't really say that.
People who are racist feel really emboldened. And there's also, I mean, I don't know how to quite phrase this, but people feel emboldened in all sorts of ways. They're not hardened far-right people, but they have hate in their hearts, which has come from resentment and come from ways in which they've been failed by society as well. And the way in which they express it is just, I mean, it happened to some friends of mine recently in a pub. They were there with their baby. And this guy who was clearly mentally really unwell was pointing at the baby and making throat-slitting gestures. Now, I don't think that guy had been on the Tommy Robinson march, but he'd been emboldened by the climate. It changed how he felt able to act. I think that...
And even our Prime Minister's response to them.
I mean, look,
Hello.
Well, you are not going to find me agreeing with that at all.
I know.
The thing that I'm saying is that I also don't want what is hyper-visible to be taken as the overall direction of travel of what most people are thinking and feeling.
I mean, how many people were on that march? This police counts 150,000.
150,000.
People claim it was like close to 1 million.
I mean, it wasn't a
million,
million.
but it was certainly a lot of people.
Right, it was a lot of people. If you think about the organised far right, they put their all into it. For me, the question is this: is 150,000 their ceiling, or is there more for them to grow from that? That's a question. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know. I just think that, like, I think we also owe it to ourselves to accept that, like, you know, it is actually a lot less socially accepted. You know, you say, oh, I remember when racists had to whisper. I mean, I also remember when I was growing up and, like, people were calling me and my mum Packy and, like, pissing on our door and putting lit cigarettes through. Like those are my memories of, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. I just think that sometimes you have to be able to hold loads of really contradictory things in the frame at once. One is the rising power of the far right. The other is that actually, you know, feelings around racial tolerance are getting better, whilst also at the same time Islamophobia is getting worse. All these things, they don't work in one coherent direction. They're like EQ levels. One can go up, one can go down. You have to make sense of the specific circumstances you're in. But one of the things that I really hope that I do in my writing is make space for contradiction and the contradictory elements of how racism operates.
Thanks for tuning into The Tea. If this episode resonated with you, drop a comment and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And why not dive into these other episodes that we think you'll love? Let's keep the conversation going.